Hello guys, my name is Nash. Welcome to Thursday Tales of Terror. TTT. Today's case was suggested by someone in the comment section. Thank you, Crystal, for suggesting this case. I've personally heard about this case before because of how brutal and crazy it was. The horrific tragedy happened on 30th July 2008. 22-year-old Tim McLean was stabbed multiple times, beheaded, and cannibalized while riding a Greyhound Canada bus by a stranger. This tragedy not only affected the people who knew Tim McLean, but the people who were on that bus, the people who witnessed the entire thing, and even the officers that were dispatched to the scene. Their lives have been greatly affected. Every single day they had nightmares of the tragedy. So what exactly happened on the bus? The victim was 22-year-old Tim McLean. He was born on October 3rd, 1985. He grew up outside of Winnipeg, Canada, in a small town called Ely, Manitoba. Tim was known to be a very active person. He was an active athlete. He was a very adventurous guy. He loved doing sports and he loved traveling. He was outgoing and he was also known to be a very spontaneous person, and he was just very fun to be around with. Tim's friends would describe him as someone who loved making new friends. He was an extrovert. He was not shy at all. He was very sociable. Because of his fun and outgoing personality, he's very adaptable to new environments. So in the summer of 2007, one of Tim's longtime friends named Tiffany rang him up and asked him if he had any plans for the summer, and Tim didn't have anything planned, so Tiffany told him to go and pack his bag for at least a week. She don't know how long exactly they will be gone for, but she told him to meet her after he's done packing. It turns out that Tiffany actually had a job opportunity for Tim. So they set off to this job opportunity, and you can see from here how outgoing Tim was. He just readily agreed to it. The job opportunity was at a carnival working as a carny, which was also known as a carnival barker. And this one was like a traveling carnival, a carnival that goes from city to city. It wasn't going to be a permanent job, but they loved it so much that they ended up working longer than expected. Both of them really enjoyed this job, especially Tim. He was in his element. He was meeting new people, making new friends, going to new places, and it was just pure joy and fun. It was the perfect job for Tim. In 2008, Tim was talking to a female friend. Her name's Colleen. He knew Colleen since first grade, and after high school, they went their separate ways. Colleen got married after that, but she had a falling out with her husband, and she eventually divorced him and got back together with Tim. According to an article, Tim and Colleen rekindled a brief romantic relationship, and that's when she got pregnant with Tim's baby. She has 2 children from her previous marriage, so this would be her 3rd child. Tim was still working at the carnival, and at this point, the carnival was in Edmonton. After Edmonton, the carnival would move to Regina. If I'm not wrong, the carnival shifts once every couple of months, so at this point, before the carnival moved to Regina, Tim decided to go home to Winnipeg. He wanted to move to British Columbia, so he wanted to go home first to make arrangements in Winnipeg, that is. Now, to get to Tim's house in Winnipeg from the location of the carnival in Edmonton is actually very far. It's a 24-hour bus journey or a 2-hour plane ticket. Tim's friends from the carnival had actually offered to buy him a plane ticket so that he wouldn't sit on that 24-hour bus ride, but somehow Tim insisted on taking the Greyhound bus. Then, just after midnight on 30th July 2008, Tim McLean boarded the 1170 bus to Winnipeg. Tim chose a seat at the back of the bus, just a row in front of the toilet, and he began his 24-hour journey back home. Of course, along the journey, the bus will make several different stops, and it was at one of the last stops where things went horribly wrong. Now, the next person that I'm going to be talking about that will have a major part in this story is Vince Lee. His full name is Vince Lee Wei Guang. He was born in Tantong, China on April 30th, 1968. Vince graduated from Wuhan Institute of Technology with a bachelor's degree in computing. From 1994 to 1998, Vince worked in Beijing as a computer software engineer. He got married to a woman named Anna in June 1995, and in June 2001, he immigrated immigrated to Canada and became a citizen on November 7, 2006. He worked in Winnipeg at a church for 6 months to support his wife Anna. Pastor Tom, who employed Vince, would describe Vince as a very hardworking and happy man. Vince seemed happy to have a job, and he was also committed to doing it well despite having a language barrier. But of course, Vince would get frustrated at times with not being able to communicate or understand, but the staff members at the church were very patient and Vince seemed to respond well. Pastor Tom also said that Vince did not show any signs of anger issues or any other trouble before quitting in the spring of 2005. After that, he worked as a forklift operator in Winnipeg while his wife worked as a waitress. Deep down, Vince was getting frustrated. He was overeducated and underemployed. In 2005, Vince was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia, but he was left untreated. Anna and Vince unfortunately got a divorce, but Anna still deeply cared for him even after they separated. In 2006, Vince moved to Edmonton. When he first moved to Edmonton, he wasn't able to get a job and he had been living in his car. Anna would send him money and eventually moved to be with him in July 2007. During this period, he managed to get a job and he was working at Walmart, at a fast food restaurant, and he was working as a newspaper delivery boy, and he seemed happy. In late July 2008, Anna returned home from work to find a note from Vince. "I'm gone. Don't look for me. I wish you were happy." Initially, when she received the note from Vince, she was not worried because she said Vince would usually be gone for a few days when he's stressed out, but he would always come back. However, 2 days later, Vince called Anna to tell her that he was leaving, and so Anna asked him, "What do you want?" And Vince just said that he would call her back after he settled down, nothing else, which I'm assuming that Vince doesn't really have a plan. At 12:05 p.m. on July 28, 2008, Vince boarded a Greyhound bus bound for Winnipeg. On July 29th, around 6 p.m., he got off the bus in Erickson, Manitoba. He had at least 3 pieces of luggage with him, and he stayed the night on a bench next to a grocery store but still close to the bus stop. According to one witness, he saw Vince at about 3 a.m. Vince was sitting bolt upright with eyes wide open, and it was not something that they would forget because it was so creepy. Vince also reportedly sold some of his stuff, which included his laptop. Vince was actually holding up a sign saying, "Laptop for sale, $600 OBO. I think OBO stands for or best offer. And the sign caught the attention of Darren, who was a 15-year-old boy. Darren managed to buy the laptop at the price of $60, and Vince tried to sell him a bag as well, but Vince ended up giving the bag for free to Darren. The laptop was however taken by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, also known as RCMP for short, as evidence after the incident happened, but the boy was subsequently given a new laptop for his honesty by an anonymous businessman. Darren was very shocked and in fact a little scared. He even thought that Vince could have been the victim because when he was talking to Vince about the laptop, he said Vince was a very nice man. So after Vince sold some of his stuff, he was waiting for the next bus to come. At around 6:55 p.m, the bus came, and this was the bus that Tim McLean was on. The bus pulled over for a break so that people can walk around and stretch themselves or smoke some cigarettes or get some snacks and drink from a vending machine or stores, and they would also pick up any new passengers. Vince, who was described as a very tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses, seemed to be minding his own business when he boarded the bus. Originally, Vince sat near the front of the bus, and after the bus got to the next rest stop, Tim got off to smoke a cigarette, and after he returned to his seat, Vince suddenly moved to sit next to Tim. Some people on the bus said that it didn't seem like the two knew each other, but Tim gave a slight acknowledgement like a hello, and then he went to put his headphones on and laid his head against the window pane to take a nap. And people were just doing their own things on the bus. The bus had those small TVs and The Return of Zorro was playing, so some people were watching that, some were sleeping, some were just looking out of the window, some were listening to music, and some were reading. Everything seemed normal until about an hour later, the silence on the bus was shattered by a piercing scream that startled everyone. It was coming from the back of the bus. According to witnesses, it was about 8:30 p.m. when Vince suddenly, without any warning at all, took out a large knife and started stabbing Tim in the neck and in the chest. Before this sudden attack happened, Tim was listening to music and sleeping. He was in his comfort zone, so there was no way he could see it coming or stop Vince in time. But people on the bus did say that Tim tried to fight back, but he was just cornered and there was very little he could do. He was already brutally injured, and some said he was thrown onto the floor of the bus or he could have fallen. According to one witness named Garnet Caton, he was actually seated right in front of the both of them, and he said Vince was stabbing Tim in a very robotic manner. Vince wasn't even screaming and he was just stabbing Tim in a very calm manner, and Garnet Caton hurriedly went to the front of the bus to tell the bus driver to stop. Somebody was getting stabbed. Everyone need to leave.
Freaking Rambo knife, hunting knife, and it was covered in blood, and he just kept going at the guy. It was like it was a robot though. The guy had, he wasn't screaming at the guy or he wasn't in a rage. It was just very calmly killing the guy.
The bus driver Bruce was also yelling. He was yelling at Vince to stop, and he quickly pulled the bus over to the side of the road. At this point, the police, the RCMP were already alerted and they were on their way. The passengers all fled in terror, but Bruce and two other men tried to save Tim. Bruce tried to talk to Vince, but Vince was holding a very large knife and chasing them away with it. Just put yourself in that position. As much as anyone wanted to save Tim, Vince was a very big guy with a large knife waving it around. There's nothing much that they could do. So Bruce, being the last person on the bus, he got off and he locked the bus from the outside. Bruce and another passenger were making sure that Vince wouldn't escape by barricading the bus. So a truck driver named Chris who was driving in the area saw that the bus was being pulled over and there were people standing outside looking somewhat panicking, and the whole situation just doesn't seem right. So Chris pulled over as well and he wanted to know what happened, and after that he also helped to barricade the bus. He also provided a crowbar and a hammer as weapons. Now while waiting for the police to arrive, Vince was still in the bus with Tim's body. He continued to stab and attack Tim, and everyone that was outside the bus could see what was going on. So then another Greyhound bus that was on the same route to carry the passenger overload also pulled over as well. The driver of that bus, Bernie, wanted to help, so he went in the bus to see if he could still save Tim. He called out to Vince and Vince responded, "Get emergency," while continuing to stab Tim. Initially, Bernie was just looking at Vince and not looking at Tim. I think Bernie tried his best not to look at Tim, but when he did, he realized that Vince was not just stabbing. He was taking out pieces of Tim's flesh and he was also severing Tim's head. Bernie eventually got off the bus as he realized that Tim was dead and could not be saved. So Bernie, Bruce, Chris, and another passenger barricaded the door again. Bernie also suggested cutting the power to the bus so that Vince wouldn't be able to start up the bus and drive it away, so they engaged the emergency immobilizer system, which makes the bus inoperable. At one point, according to witnesses, Vince was walking around in the bus and he went to the front of the bus looking at the controls. They believed that Vince was trying to start the bus. And when he realized that he was stuck in the bus, he tried to stab and smash his way out of the door, but all his attempts at escaping failed. So eventually he just continued what he was doing. He continued to stab and mutilate Tim's body. At around 9 p.m, the police arrived. Corporal Harder attempted to communicate with Vince from outside the bus and asked him to drop the knife out of a small window, but Vince wasn't listening. While Corporal Harder was trying his best with the situation, special negotiators and a heavily armed tactical unit were called up to defuse the tense situation. And during this whole time when they were trying to convince Vince, it was said that Vince was saying some unintelligible words that doesn't make any sense, but the one thing they did hear and understand from Vince was, "I'm going to stay on this bus forever." So because Vince was doing a lot of things to Tim's body and people outside of the bus, they could see it, most of them could only scream in horror. Many of them vomited and they were all just traumatized. They could see Vince just cutting deep into Tim's body with a knife and scissors, and Vince would pull body parts and even organs out of Tim's body, and officers noted that Vince appeared to smell parts of Tim's flesh, and after smelling it, he would eat it. He also appeared to lick blood from his fingers and hands. He continued to carry Tim's internal organs and various body parts throughout the bus, later returning to bag them in white plastic garbage bags. Vince also picked up Tim's head and walked around in the bus with it. It was such a horrific sight. As all of this was happening, the stranded passengers were all transported from the scene to be interviewed at the Brandon RCMP detachment. At around 1:30 a.m. July 31, 2008, Vince attempted to escape from the bus by breaking through a window. He threw out some personal belongings, a knife and a scissors. He then jumped out of the bus head first, landing on top of the knife. RCMP members immediately tried to apprehend him. He was struggling, screaming, and he refused to surrender. Police then stunned him with a taser before they could handcuff him, and then he was taken to the police vehicle. After he was arrested, some of the police got on the bus, and it was really a very horrific scene. A variety of Tim McLean's body parts and organs were found throughout the bus in plastic bags. They also noticed that Tim's ears, eyes, nose, and tongue were all missing from his face. It turns out that Tim's ears, nose, and tongue were found in Vince's pockets. They were in plastic bags. Tim's eyes and 1/3 of his heart were never found or recovered, and it was presumed that Vince might have eaten it. At around 10 a.m., Greyhound representative took the other passengers to a local store to replace their clothes which remained on the bus. Some of them got their clothes stained with blood, so they needed to be replaced. They arrived in Winnipeg at 3:30 p.m. on another bus that day to be reunited with family members and friends. It was also said that Tim's mother was actually watching the news that day and they saw what happened at that time, but the victim's identity was not revealed. At lunch, Tim's mother and family said a prayer for that victim and their family, not knowing that they were the victim's family. It was really sad. On the 3rd of March 2009, Vince's trial commenced. Now, although Vince was obviously responsible for whatever had taken place on the bus, Vince was pleading not criminally responsible. This means he accepted that the offense occurred, but he claimed that he was not in his right mental state of mind. The psychiatrist said that Vince could not be held criminally responsible because he had been having a psychotic episode and he was hearing voices when he attacked his sleeping victim on the bus. Vince believed that the voices were from God and God was telling him that he was in danger, and that's when he sat next to Tim. He believed that Tim was the demon and that he needed to kill him or else he would be killed. Vince was then charged with second-degree murder but was not found to be criminally responsible. According to Crown Attorney Joyce, Vince had schizophrenia and he was having an episode. He had no idea what he did was wrong, and people like Vince need to be treated and not convicted. The presiding judge, John Scurfield, accepted the diagnosis and thereby wrote him not criminally responsible. So Vince was remanded to the mental hospital where he would be able to receive the right treatments, and after about 8 years, he was fully discharged in February 2017. He later changed his name to Will Lee Baker. He has been a model citizen. He lives every day with remorse about what he did, and he knows that, and he knows it was atrocious and he will never forgive himself, said Chris Somerville, Chief Executive of the Schizophrenia Society of Canada. Of course, there are people even up till today they're not happy about Vince being fully discharged and walking around freely. They express fear with this decision, and Tim's family especially, they have been going through a rough time. Tim's mom even had a petition called Tim's Law where she would gather signatures to try and change the Criminal Code of Canada to enact minimum sentences to people who commit murder but are found not criminally responsible on account of a mental disorder. Like I've mentioned earlier, the witnesses, the people who saw what happened that night, they were having it rough. They were all traumatized. Some become an alcoholic, hoping that drinking will make them forget the horrible memories of that night, while others have sought therapy and even moved to new locations. Some are even terrified to go out in places where there are large crowds or loud sounds. And can you imagine, some of them are even scared to enter a bus. One of the passengers who gave birth a couple of years later, it was reported that she suffered from PTSD after the attack and she was actually unfit to care for her baby daughter. The baby was unfortunately taken away from her and she was placed in a foster home for the first 18 months of her life. The woman said she still has nightmares. She has problems using public transit and trusting people. She also gets nervous around strangers. Another witness, if you remember Chris, the truck driver who stopped to help, he also struggled from PTSD. He turned to alcohol to help him sleep at night. Even after 10 years, he has never stopped mourning the life of Tim McLean. Now, one of the members of the RCMP was extremely burdened and overwhelmed by his PTSD that he unfortunately took his life 6 years after the tragedy. Two of the passengers on the bus even filed a lawsuit against Vince, Greyhound, the RCMP, and the government of Canada, asking for $3 million to compensate them for witnessing Vince stabbing Tim to death, mutilating his body, and performing acts of cannibalism. It was later dropped because the bus line said it could not be sued under Manitoba's system of no-fault vehicle insurance. In this case, some were not happy that Vince managed to get the help he needed, but the passengers who had to witness the gruesome act wouldn't offer any help with their traumas. Greyhound also did not offer any type of help for them except when they were brought to the stores to get a change of clothing. Even Tim's family filed a lawsuit against Greyhound. According to them, right from day one, they received condolences, thank yous, and so sorry from everybody, from Transport Canada, from the RCMP, from the media. Everybody except Greyhound acknowledged their condolences. On December 21, 2008, 5 months after the tragedy, Tim's girlfriend Colleen gave birth. It was said that Tim was distressed in 2008 when he first heard that Colleen was pregnant and that he wasn't ready to raise a child. He had urged Colleen to have an abortion. An appointment was made, but she never went. The family, however, was embroiled in a bitter custody dispute between Tim's family and Colleen over Tim's son. But Tim's mother and her husband were granted full guardianship of Tim's son. So that is the horrible and tragic story of what happened to Tim McLean. Now I'm going to dive deeper into Vince's life. Earlier when I talk about Vince's life, it's just a small summary. In this tragic story, people either think that Vince does not deserve to be fully discharged and that he should be in prison because mental illness or not, what he did was too brutal and wrong. And then there is a minority of people who believe that Vince is not having it easy either and that we should all forgive him. He was having a schizophrenic episode. It's not his fault. So Vince's family reported that Vince was very fragile and very sickly until his early teens. His father said that Vince was about 2 years late in developmental milestones such as talking and walking. As a result, Vince started school at the age of 9, 2 years later than everyone else in China. In 1995, he married a woman named Anna, and life in China was simple. Both Anna and his family said that Vince displayed no clear signs of mental illness. He never demonstrated any violent tendencies or problems with alcohol or drug abuse. So when Vince and his wife immigrated to Canada, Vince was never able to find more than menial jobs. In 2004, Vince's life began to take a turn for the worse. His wife noted that in the summer of 2004, Vince would go several days without food or sleep. He cried a lot and he told his wife Anna that he saw God and she thought that maybe the lack of sleep is not doing him good. So she bought him some sleeping pills, but it didn't work too well. At one point, he even admitted to Anna that he was hearing voices. He said the voices provided him directions and guidance. Friends advised Anna to take her husband to a doctor, but she refused, citing language and cultural barriers, as well as Vince's inevitable opposition to any plan that might label him as mentally ill. Vince was also fearful of Western medicine. Despite all this, Anna cared deeply for her husband. She took days off work to help him, and when Vince briefly returned to China in 2005, she implored his parents to get him medical treatment. In March 2005, Vince abruptly left their Winnipeg home for Thompson. Vince said that there was a voice commanded him to buy a land there. He realized he had no money and he took a job instead. Over the next 4 months, he worked at Thompson Walmart performing overnight maintenance. He returned to Winnipeg in June 2005 where he pumped gas for Domo and worked part-time at Tim Hortons. It was during this period that he suffered his first mental breakdown. 6 months later, he suddenly hopped a plane to Toronto, but God told him to go back to Winnipeg, so he started walking on the highway and he threw his luggage because God told him to do so. He was eventually picked up by the police and he was sent to William Osler Health Center. A doctor there noted that he was vague, seemed to be hallucinating, staring into space. He had not slept or eaten for 3 days. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and given medications that he refused to take. Believing Vince was at risk of harming himself and others, doctors placed him on 2 involuntary admission certificates which legally detained him for 14 days. For reasons still unclear, he walked away from the hospital just after 10 days. In other words, Vince escaped. In most hospitals, this will happen more than once a year. Unless we lock all the doors to all the hospitals, people will be able to get out. When patients do escape, doctors are generally obliged to alert the authorities. In theory, the police should always be called because the patient is still on certificate and therefore must have still been a threat to himself or others. But in practice, that does not always happen, said Phil, Deputy Clinical Director for the Law and Mental Health Program and the Centre for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto. Several factors can influence whether doctors notify police. The patient may have been responding to treatment or nearing the expiry of a certificate, or the hospital simply did not have resources. Most hospitals have enough people to look after. As a result, these people who refuse treatment are often placed at the back of the line when in fact they are the ones with the worst mental state and should be placed at the very front. After escaping the William Osler Health Centre, Vince returned to Anna looking like a homeless person, but he continued to evade treatment. On a visit to China, a doctor there gave him a clean bill of health. In 2007, the couple moved back in together, but he continued to reject treatment. And in late 2008, that's when he left that puzzling note for Anna. "Don't look for me. I wish you were happy." She didn't discover his whereabouts until the RCMP called her late on July 30th as her beloved ex-husband was dismembering Tim McLean's body. What do you guys think? Some people think it's unfair and Vince should be in prison and get treatment in prison. Some people think that he shouldn't be let out at all and that he should be locked up forever. Given by what I said about Vince's mental history, he was commanded by the voice in his head and he had no control. Do you feel that Vince should be forgiven even though what happened was tragic? In fact, it's pretty common for people with mental disorder to not accept that they have mental disorder, and it's only normal for people to be afraid of getting treatments. There's many things to learn from this case, one of which is don't sleep on a public bus if you're alone. And mental health is very important, so please take care of yourself. Till then, I'll see you again next Thursday with another video.